Welcome to another episode of Talking About Records. My name is G.I. Sanders from NTX Vinyl, a small chain of independent record stores in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. If you don't already follow or subscribe on YouTube, Facebook, or Instagram, please look up NTX Vinyl and give us a follow. We'd really appreciate it. Today's topic is a fun one. This is 10 vinyl reissues that have skyrocketed in value in the past 2 years. Keyword is reissues. I'm not talking about original pressings of albums from the 70s, 80s, 90s, I'm talking about reissues that have come out in recent years. And then since the pandemic, essentially, the value has simply risen and does not look like it's going to stop anytime soon. I'm going to show what these 10 albums are. These are just examples. Behind these 10, there's another 100, and that's across every genre. So these are just some examples I pulled out of my collection. I'm going to talk about not only the albums themselves, but why this is happening and if I think there's any end in sight in regards to specific albums like this. Again, especially as it pertains to reissues, not original copies that came out long ago. So first of all, let's talk about what these albums have in common. First and foremost, they're all amazing albums. I don't think you can discount that. There aren't a lot of albums that I've seen that have gone up in value, whether it's been recently or not, that aren't great records, right? It all comes down to the music, and if it's timeless music, if it's music that generation to generation is seeing value from the music because of how incredible it is, well, I think that speaks volumes in regards to whether or not the value is going to sustain or go up, right? So I think first and foremost is that the music is great across the board. All of these are iconic albums, and I think you can go deeper too and find a lot more. Just examples. The second point is, again, these are reissues, and they're standard what in the industry is called pretty much catalog titles or catalog releases, meaning these are not limited edition. These aren't numbered copies. I don't think any of these are colored vinyl. They're not record store day releases. So again, just normal reissues that labels continue to repress over time. Some of these came out, or the majority of these came out in the 90s originally. 90s, early 2000s. I think there's a couple maybe that are later than that. But point being, these are not the originals. These are reissues that just came out in the past couple years or were still in print in the past couple years and have gone nuts as far as value. And we'll talk about why along the way. The first one is a big one, and this is Allison Chains Unplugged. I picked Unplugged, but I could have picked Allison Chains Dirt, or I could have picked Allison Chains Sap and Jar Flies. Those three albums specifically, Unplugged, Dirt, and Jarfly Sap, they have all increased exponentially in value in the past 2 years. These actually started getting pressed by Music on Vinyl, which is a reissue record label, as early as 2010. But they've been in print for many, many years. If I go back just even 18 months or 2 years ago, these were readily available everywhere for 25, 30, 35 bucks, right? Normal cost for a double LP. I was selling these like crazy in my shops and NTX Vinyl online. Very easy to come by. Then what happened was the pandemic hit, which is one thing. But the other thing that happened is Music on Vinyl, specifically for this one, they lost their contract with Allison Chains, or the contract ran out as far as the number they were willing to press. And so it went out of print. What out of print means is that the label's no longer able to press any more copies. So guess what? They disappear from the market. And since 2020, June of 2020, the value has gone from about $25 or $30 to where now these sell for about $300, $250, $300, $350. It's crazy. And that's simply because it's out of print. Now, is it going to come back in print? Very likely so. Now, it probably won't be from Music on Vinyl, which is a little bit of a higher end reissue label, so maybe the quality won't be identical. My gut says if Allison Chains does it like they typically do, and they take this in-house, that they may actually reissue these themselves. They did that with their first record, Facelift, within the past year. So my gut says if you don't have Allison Chains Dirt or Unplugged or Jar Flies, just wait it out a little bit because there's probably going to be another pressing. Again, it won't be this exact same one, so I don't think the value of this one is necessarily going to completely tank. But when the market gets flooded again with copies of these albums, that definitely has an impact on value. But the fact that this one has gone from 20 or 30 bucks to $300 in 2 years, it's quite amazing to watch. You know, it really is. And of course, as a record store owner, you're kicking yourself like, why did I not stock up on that, right? But you just never know. You never know which albums are going to go out of print. The stores don't know. I can tell you the distributors don't know. It goes all the way down to the label and the artist level, which, you know, they don't publicize that stuff. Music on vinyl wasn't necessarily telling, you know, record stores or distributors that, hey, we're almost out of these. So it went out of print. There's no more to be found in, you know, in the wild necessarily, unless you see one at a record store that someone just, you know, has been sitting around for a while. But for the most part, these are all in the secondary market, and they have skyrocketed in value. And that's putting it mildly. So that's the first one. Allison Chains, pretty much, again, most of their catalog is that way. The second one is Nirvana in utero. Now, this is a specific pressing. Again, it wasn't necessarily limited edition. This was the 20th anniversary edition, which was a 3 LP set. But again, this went for brand new, you know, $40, $50, was pretty easily found a couple years ago, and now it's up, you know, $150, $200. And it's the same thing. The reason why this has skyrocketed in value is because it's out of print, because you can't go to a record store online or physical and find it unless it's, again, kind of a rarity that happened to make it through. Will it get pressed again? I don't know. This one's a little unique because it was 20th anniversary edition, so this one may not come back into print. But the majority of these that I'm going to talk about, I guarantee you they are just waiting in line at the pressing plants, just like everyone else. Whether it's new releases, reissues, whatever it may be, it doesn't matter if it's Nirvana or Adele or Taylor Swift or Allison Chains or any of these other bands I'm going to talk about, or any band you can name. They're all waiting in line right now in pressing plants to get their albums pressed. And that problem is not going away anytime soon. So I don't know if this one's going to come back into print. But certainly the album in utero will, and there's a different versions of this one. There's a 2013 mix that just became available because it got pressed again. And so again, you've got to imagine a scenario where all of these record labels in the United States and internationally, they are backed up at the pressing plants trying to get all of their catalog titles and all their new releases through the pressing plant so they can get them to distribution, so they can get them to record stores, so they can get them into your hands. That's a long process, and it's not going to speed up anytime soon. So, you know, if you find a copy of this one out in the wild, grab it if it's affordable. Again, this one's gone up a lot just in the past year or two. I've seen it go for upwards of $200. It's crazy. Let's look at The Downward Spiral by 9 Inch Nails. This is, again, not original. This is a 2017, what is known as the definitive edition. They released a couple of their albums in that definitive edition, which is basically Trent Reznor and you know, Atticus Ross. They went back and remastered and re-released these on vinyl. So again, going back just to mid 2020, this was a $30 record, and now it's gone as high as almost $120. Same thing. That's because right now you can't buy it. You can't go into a record store or go online and buy it. And there are people who have just started collecting in the last year, last month even, who are like, man, I really want to grab a copy of that. I love that record. And so they go online and they start searching. They go to Amazon, they go to their local record store, and it's not there. That's because it's out of print, because they're waiting in line. I guarantee you, well, I take that back. I don't guarantee you. My gut says that this album, as well as the other 9 Inch Nails albums that are kind of inching towards the same area of value, that they're all going to come back. They'll do another pressing. Because, you know, that's what labels want. That's what artists want. They want to actually get the music out there. They want to sell records. That's what they're in the business of doing. There's no reason, you know, they're not necessarily, again, unless it's limited edition or it's a numbered copy or record store day or something that's really constricted to the number they can press. There's no reason that they would not go back to the pressing plant and press another 5,000 of this record to get it out into the market. But it's a matter of the waiting game. They can't get it through that quickly, and people are simply impatient, especially people who are, again, new to the game, and they don't really understand that albums come in print and go out of print, and you just have to be patient, right? And so this is another example of a record that's gone, you know, from $30 to $120 just in the last 18 months, right? This may be the best example right here. This is probably the album I get asked about most of all the records that I sell. Smashing Pumpkins, Siamese Dream. This is the 2011 reissue. So it dates back a while, similar to the Allison Chains catalog. But again, they've been in print all of this time. So even a year or two ago, distributors had these because they were getting pressed and they were getting distributed out to record stores and to customers. This album has gone from, it had a little higher price point starting out to where this even retailed when it was new for $50 or so, and it's gone up to $250, which is just crazy for such an iconic album and for such an essential album in an artist's catalog like this. You would think, why is it not readily available? Well, it's not readily available because they can't get it pressed because they're waiting in line. That's all it has to do with. If there were 50 pressing plants instead of just 20 or 25, which is what there are in the US right now, then this would be readily available because it would be able to get through the backlog a lot faster. Will this get repressed? My gut says yes. I cannot imagine a scenario where Siamese Dream does not get repressed in the next year or 2 or 3. Hopefully it's not even that long. Hopefully it's just a couple months, but the reality is that's how far things are out right now. If you want to get a new record pressed or get any record pressed, doesn't matter if it's new or if it's a reissue, obviously. If you want to get any record pressed right now, you're looking at 8 to 12 months from the time you submit your project, right? And you pay your deposit. That's a long time to wait. For the record labels, they've got, again, I'm just showing you 10 examples. Think about how many hundreds of catalog titles, if not thousands of catalog titles that are out there waiting to get repressed right now. And they're all waiting in line at all these different pressing plants. Not to mention all of the new releases that are trying to get slotted in. All of the independent releases that are trying to get slotted in. All of the short run releases like I do on my record label, the DFW Legacy series. Like we're just pressing, 100, 200, 300 copies of these things where, I guarantee you that for Siamese Dream, they're pressing 5 to 10,000, but they can't get them through, right? And so that's what's going on with these records. That's why they're so hard to find. So this is another, probably the best example. I think this one, along with Allison Chains, are the two I get asked about the most in the last 6 to 12 months because you just can't find them anywhere, right? So we're going to stay in the same era. This is Temple of the Dog, iconic record, super group from the 90s, Soundgarden, Pearl Jam, tribute to Andy Wood. If you're not familiar with Temple of the Dog, please look it up. The only album that was ever released by the band. This is the 2011 reissue remaster. This is a double LP version that went for a little bit more. I mean, it was a $30, $35 record. There's a single LP version of this record that that was $20, $25 retail. But this is another example of this has been out of print in the last couple of years, and I've seen the value since September 2019. It was a $30 record, and now it's up near $175. Just another example of waiting in line. I mean, I feel like a broken record at this point, but you get the idea. All of these albums, hopefully, fingers crossed, will come back and will be more readily available in the near future or in the future. But no one knows how long it's going to take, and no one knows what that order is. Believe me, I've asked distributors, like, do you know when Siamese Dream or when Allison Chains Unplugged or when Temple of the Dog or whatever it be, do you know when it's coming? And they have no idea. They don't know until it arrives in their warehouse or about the week before it arrives in their warehouse what they're actually getting, right? Because the labels cut deals, the artists and labels cut deals with the pressing plants to get these things done, and then they're automatically shipped off to the distributors. There isn't a huge amount of communication in regards to what's coming. That's very frustrating, not only for you as a consumer, but for the record stores, because we can't answer people when people ask us, hey, when are you going to get this back in stock? We have no idea. But here's another example, Temple of the Dog. Hard record to find right now. If you see one for cheap, grab it up, because otherwise you may not be able to spin it if you don't already own it for a year or two or something like that. Tool, Lateralis, very talked about album. This is I guess it's a reissue. This is a picture disc. It's the only version of Lateralis that's ever been released, is the picture disc version. I'll actually open it up. It's pretty cool. It came out originally as a picture disc, and they've never done a standard version. So it's a really cool presentation. And they've repressed this time and time and time again over the course of the last, let's say, 10 years, But same as the others. In the past year or so, it just dropped off. And I used to be able to go in and click and buy 5 or 10 or 20 of these and get them into my record shop and be able to sell those to customers. And then all of a sudden it just stopped. And now the button just says unavailable. And there's no way to get any more. And so the value on this has gone from $40 going back just to January of 2020 to where now it's sold for as much as $125 or close to $150. Just this normal reissue, not the original one that actually came out. I believe this record came out in 2002 or 2000, if I'm correct. I'm guessing on that off the top of my head, but you get the idea. It's just another example of an album that people are impatient for. That's the whole thing. If people are patient, you can get these things in your collection, but the patience is running thin by the entire vinyl community, and that's what's driving the price up. People get impatient, and then you've got someone like, a collector who realizes, man, you can't buy this anywhere. I'll pop it up, see if I get $150 for it. As soon as one person bites, that establishes that secondary market value. They see, oh, the last one sold for 150, so I'm going to list mine for 175. That's how the value ratchets up on these things. Doesn't matter which one we're talking about, or if it's any of the other hundreds that this is happening to. The secondary market establishes this value and ratchets it up. Now, will the value of this album or any of these editions completely tank once a new reissue comes out? It'll certainly normalize a little bit because, hey, maybe I don't need the 2010 pressing, music on vinyl pressing of Allison Chains Unplugged, because there's a brand new pressing available and the quality is just as good. So obviously that one's going to become a little bit less desirable, but the market value is established at a certain point. And even though a reissue comes out, it's still a different edition. And for a lot of collectors, owning those different editions is very important. And that's what helps that value sustain on the previous reissues, even though there's newer versions, right? And so just another example of that is Tool's Lateralis. Here's OK Computer. This was their 2017 deluxe reissue of this album. So it's a three disc set. It came in black vinyl. There's also a more limited edition on blue vinyl. This is just the black vinyl version I'm talking about. Going back to just the end of 2020 was, a $45, $50 record, and now it's spiking up near $150. So kind of very similar to that Tool record. And again, I think this is that scenario where you've got a new collector entering the game in the last couple months who started discovering vinyl, and they want to get into it, and they go, oh man, I love that iconic Radiohead record, OK Computer, I want to get a copy of that. Not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. You're not going to walk into a Walmart. You're not going to walk into most record stores unless they have a copy, secondhand copy available, which will be more closer to market value in most cases, because this album and all of these, they're not readily available right now from distributors, which means record stores don't have quantity of them. They may have one if you walk in and get lucky, but you're not going to walk in and find 20 copies sitting on a shelf of OK Computer, which is a shame because it's such an iconic album. You should be able to walk in. Everybody should be able to walk in and buy these iconic albums. They are essentials to any collection if you're a rock, alternative, metal collector, right? And so, again, it's just a matter of being patient, and that patience has run its course during the pandemic because so many people either started collecting or they really ratcheted up their collecting, and they're looking for these albums. They're trying to fill out the discographies of these artists. They're trying to get these kind of essential recordings, as I call them, and that's what's really driving that demand on the secondary market. All right, this is, of the whole bunch, this is one that is actually more of a recent pressing, meaning there's not an original of this one dating back, because this is obviously a Chris Cornell kind of greatest hits, if you will. Came out not too long after his death in 2018. There's a couple different versions of this one, but even the standard version that started out, $30, $35 has gone up over $150. So a similar trajectory to all of these. You've just seen it over the past basically 12 to 24 months have spiked. This is another one that, man, I'm kicking myself for not stocking up on it, because when it was readily available in 2019, you could get these, and it was a pretty high price point going in. It started out at, at around $40 retail for a record, but the artwork is incredible. The packaging's great. And so it was a good deal at $40. But now it's like you can't buy it for less than $150, which is really difficult unless you catch someone on a good day, right? So just another example of an artist, obviously, that's very iconic. I'll roll right into the next one because it's also a Soundgarden release. So Soundgarden Super Unknown, again, started out, being a $30 record all day long back in, mid 2020, and now, it's gone up above $100 in some cases. And this is just the reissue. This is not an original 1994 copy of Super Unknown. This is a reissue that that came out, and they probably pressed 5,000 or 10,000 of these, and they made their way out through record stores, and were all bought up, and now they're gone, and now they're waiting in line trying to get more of this iconic album pressed. And when it does get pressed, it'll be back into the market. And the thing is, the demand is so high for all of these right now that the minute any of them do get repressed, they get just bought up right away. It wipes all the inventory out. Every record store, mine included, are on the waiting list for all of these albums if they're still in print. There's a couple, like the Allison Chains in particular, are out of print, so that'll be a new pressing. But all of these, there's a pretty good chance they're gonna get repressed, and all the record stores have them on what's called their shelf list. And so the minute this becomes available, I've already got copies that are allocated to me. So they're gonna come to my store, and then I'm gonna push them through to customers right away. And so if you're not fast as a customer, it's near impossible to get these types of things, even if the pressing is quite large. So, and again, I'm generalizing, but for albums like these that are where the demand is so high because the value has gone up so much, you're going to have to be really quick on your feet, because even if they do press a good amount, they're going to go from the pressing plant to the distributor to the record stores and to the customers in a flash. And it's not going to take long for these to get out to customers, because everyone's been waiting on them for the last 2-3 years in some cases, right? All right, the last one that I will talk about, love this record. This is Nico by Blind Melon. Out of all of these, this is probably one of the more niche records. Not that Blind Melon is a niche band, but this was not one of their major releases. This is a compilation that came out after the death of Shannon Hoon. It was not released on vinyl originally back in the day. It didn't come out until 2018 in this version, which is again, there's a limited edition of this, but even just speaking about the black vinyl standard version, which was a $25-30 record as of 2018, and even going close to 2021, you could grab it for 40 or 50 bucks, and now it's up $80 plus in some cases to get this record, which is a shame, because it's a great album that everyone deserves to not only hear but own. And it's just another one that hopefully is waiting in line, and hopefully will come back around. Blind Melon's self-titled record is in print right now, and you can grab that one. Soup has kind of come and gone over the last couple of years, in and out of press. Nico, for whatever reason, just disappeared about a year ago, mid 2021, just disappeared. And again, my gut says waiting in line with all the rest of them. And so it's a frustrating business model, but the reality is, when you're dealing with physical goods that are not easy to manufacture, it's expensive to set up a pressing plant, not only monetarily, but from a knowledge perspective. You have to know what you're doing. It takes a very long time, because all of the mechanics that go into pressing a record, and all of the knowledge that goes into pressing a record, is not something everybody has. Not a lot of people are willing to take that deep dive and learn how to do it, and open a pressing plant and be able to facilitate these labels to get these albums through faster. And so there's a huge backlog. It's not gonna subside anytime soon, unfortunately, but fingers crossed that all of these great albums that I showed, as well as many others, will eventually see the light of day again, and they will make their way into collectors' hands, because it would be a damn shame if they didn't. And it would be just really short-sighted of the record labels, obviously. Vinyl's now outselling any other physical format, and so if they want to actually profit from any physical media, vinyl's going to be what they're investing in the near future. And so I struggle to think that all of these are not going to come back at a certain point. It's just a matter of how much patience do you have as a customer. So that's talking about records. That's talking about a bunch of records that are hard to find right now. We'll be back with more videos soon. Really appreciate all of the positive feedback and comments and enthusiasm for the videos I've been pumping out recently. Keep them coming. Really glad to see it, and I'll keep the videos coming if you guys keep watching. So thanks again, G.I. Sanders, NTX Vinyl, and we'll see you next time.